Hey guys, a happy Wednesday. Joe Madden. This is the Joe Madden Sports Show. I am joined by the one and only Kelsey Nicole Nealson. Kelsey, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a thrill to be back. No better person I'd want to spend my midday week with than you, Joe. So good to see you.
Oh, it is awesome. It's been a hot minute since I've had you on. What's happening for you right now?
Oh my gosh. I know. I feel like we're connected because of social media, but just so much, obviously in sports. And then since I'm in DC, I'm also involved a lot with politics. So busy with events, busy with the sports season, even though it's not maybe going the way many in Washington want, Joe. But nonetheless, I know we'll discuss that, but it's been fun. I love this time of the year, NBA kicking off, training camp, preseason. I feel like this, if you're a sports fan, college football, and my Terps are doing pretty decent. We almost beat Michigan, onward and upward for Terps football. So I feel like right now it's good. It's just, I don't know how you're not busy. So all of us are running around like a chicken with its head cut off, but you're still trying to make it look like everything is going well and good and that life is fine.
I was sure cheering for you guys to beat Michigan as an Ohio State girl. I love to see Michigan get beat. So that was a great game. Congratulations to you guys for hanging in there.
So close. And if you went to Maryland or if you watched Maryland, that was progress. All right. Maryland football, especially since the Big Ten move, we've been struggling. All right. We were just glad to go to a bowl game last year. So this season, to actually be with the top dogs and honestly give them a run for their money, it was huge for this Maryland football program. It really shows that head coach Mike Locksley has begun to turn things around with the guys he's getting at Maryland. Not all the top recruits go there, but there's good football players and they found a way. They fought hard. They killed themselves with their own mistakes, but hopefully they clean that up next game. And this Maryland team could really be a sneaky underdog to watch out for. I don't think you can look at the schedule now, Joe, and see University of Maryland coming to your school and just saying easy win. No, now you're going to actually have to game plan and figure out a way to stop the Terps.
Absolutely, we will. Okay, so we're going to talk your Washington Commanders. Before we get into them, you were just in Pittsburgh.
I loved Pittsburgh, and they loved a Maryland girl that's a Ravens fan. So thank you, Pittsburgh, for being kind and nice to me.
That is awesome to hear.
Beautiful city. If people haven't been there, I feel like Pittsburgh isn't that place that people think about a lot, or when they do, I don't think they think about the beauty, of the city. But I had such a fun time, had some of the most amazing food there. So better believe, Joe, I will be back in Pittsburgh probably sometime soon.
Okay. Well, let's jump into your Washington Commanders. They're 1-2 on the season right now. They got that week 1 win over the Jacksonville Jaguars, then lost to the Lions. And then what the heck happened in the first half versus the Eagles? Because I tell you, that first half is what did it.
Joe, deja vu in Washington. We already had to watch this team struggle the first half the last week against the Detroit Lions. And of course, they tried to rally back, but it wasn't enough. And honestly, I'm a person that grew up in the church, Joe. And so what we'd call this Washington Commanders football team is false prophets. They're giving us false hope after that week 1 win. And by the way, the Jacksonville Jaguars, right, have been a team that have really turned the corner and turned things around. You see post-Urban Meyer era, they're looking pretty good and like a team that's on the onward and upward bound. And that's what we wanted for Washington, right? Last season, not good in Washington. We're believing once again in Ron Rivera. But when you're getting shut out the first half of games, that's not good. And especially, I think there's a lot of pressure on Carson Wentz. I think I've said this on your show before, but I really feel like this is a last stand for him in the National Football League to prove that he can be a starter in the NFL. All that to say, it wasn't just on Carson Wentz. I mean, when you get sacked 9 times, the offensive line is a problem. And that was a huge problem. That Eagles defensive front kept bringing the pressure, and Washington didn't know how to handle that. Ryan Clark made a comment this week talking about, Carson Wentz got real familiar with his old teammate saying hi because he was on his back so much, Joe. That's never good. And I think when you saw the pressure going to Carson, he was holding on to the ball too long. He looked apprehensive too, like he didn't know what to do with it. And so I think he started to second guess himself. So really the offense never really got to get going, Joe. And that was the big problem, in this game. And it was bad enough, Joe, that there were probably just as much or more Eagles fans at that game. So it really felt like this Washington was playing on the road almost. Like, it was like, am I in DC or Philly? Like, I know it's close on the East Coast, Joe, but it's unacceptable. So I think all in all, Washington couldn't get their offense going. The running game in Washington, they need to get going. Obviously, you can't even think about getting the ball down the field because Carson was getting pressured so much. He just tried to get rid of it. So, I think all in all, this Washington team, they have to get it together. Scott Turner getting a lot of questions about what him and the offense are going to do. But again, I think the biggest thing we're looking at is that offensive line. Joe, Fletcher Cox and, just Jordan Davis. I mean, everybody from the Eagles was just giving them problems. And you could just tell Carson Wentz looked uncomfortable in that pocket. And then he started to call on other quarterbacks, maybe, Joe, to get that start. I think people are quickly turning on this Carson Wentz, just kind of re-belief train, because this was supposed to be the big game against your old team. Prove that you still got it. And unfortunately, it was just an embarrassing game for Washington, probably one of the worst games of the day, honestly, on Sunday, because after they got down that much, you knew they were just going to have a hard time coming back.
Okay, Kelsey, so let's talk about Carson Wentz in here behind this offensive line. For myself, if you put any quarterback behind a terrible offensive line, you are going to struggle. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think this is too early to jump off Carson Wentz and maybe make some changes on that line?
Yeah, so I think the big question with Carson Wentz, of course, they wanted a veteran, right, quarterback in Washington. That's why he was brought here. It's supposed to be that leadership and a guy that, should supposed to be still got it. You got a great tight end, Logan Thomas, great wide receivers, on this football team. Look at Curtis Samuel, and everybody. I think you see all the pieces that he has. And so really it seemed like the job was easy if the offensive line could protect and block him. Now, obviously, that did not happen. When you look at the 9 sacks, it was a loss for 58 yards, folks. And so you look at the final yards for Washington in that passing game, it goes down to 153 yards. Unacceptable. And look at the big quarterbacks on the day. On the opposite side, Jalen Hurts had a hell of a day on the football. In Baltimore, Lamar Jackson had a great day on Sunday. And so all in all, I think when you look at Washington, something's going to have to change if you are going to stick with Carson Wentz, which Ron Rivera said he will moving forward. He's saying, hold up, not just yet. It's still early in the season, and this is still our guy. But I think many in Washington are saying, but look, if you do that, you look at Turner, who had issues, and Norwell, who had issues on that, offensive line, and you look at them being signed this offseason, right, and what their roles were supposed to be, and they're just not doing the job. When you look at this Washington offensive line, they're just as bad as the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line. But we knew the Bengals offensive line, Joe, was going to be a problem this football season. We didn't know that much, I think, about Washington. And the scary thing about it is they're about to play the Cowboys, Joe, who on the other end have the most sacks in the National Football League. So, okay, we have an offensive line problem. We're about to play a division rival in the Cowboys. We just lost to the Eagles. There's a problem. So something's going to have to change very quickly in Washington. Or this is a team, Joe, that might even get to the 500 mark this season.
Absolutely. So who do you have more faith in that quarterback role, Wentz or Heineke, coming out here versus the Cowboys? Because we know Heineke did have some success last year. I was actually shocked that he didn't get the starting role.
Yeah, Heineke is that guy that people love in Washington because of his heart. And it feels like, he's one of those guys that wears his heart on his sleeve and will give you his all. And the great thing about Heineke we like is that he'll scramble. He'll get those couple of yards to pick up that first down. Washington, one of the biggest problems they're having this season, Joe, is their productivity on first down. And they're a team that likes to keep passing the ball, but obviously passing hasn't been their biggest strength since game one. And really game one, if you look at it, Washington was able to bounce back even after Carson Wentz interceptions, right? So that's a large part to the role that Washington played on both sides of the football. So all in all, I think you do start with Washington. I do think start with Wentz. You do have to kind of get into a groove. And obviously, it's just week 3 of football. So I don't know. Some are hitting the panic button. I think after week 4, though, is really when you will kind of start to see, is this the guy we want to keep with? But I do think if he's struggling early against the Dallas Cowboys and you're on the road in Dallas, which is not an easy place to play in that gorgeous new football stadium, something's going to have to change. Because you also remember the guys on the sidelines, they have to believe what's happening on the football field.
Oh, absolutely.
They have to believe in that quarterback that's supposed to be a commander going after the team name. But if he can't command what's happening on the football field, you're going to lose faith. Because also the problem with Carson Wentz, Joe, is with how he's playing, Washington fans are also starting to lose faith in the coaches in Washington. And, there's a reason why there was more away fans at these games, Joe, because people aren't believing anymore in the product on the football field. I've had multiple season ticket holders, reach out to me and say, if Washington has a losing season this year, enough is enough and I'm done.
That's hard.
It's hard in Washington. So I do think Carson Wentz, again, I'm not ready to write him off just yet, but he is struggling. And I really hope that Carson Wentz gets the belief. Honestly, it starts with himself to show. I know he's listening probably to some of this media, and it's not good media this week for him, Joe. Really, the last 2 weeks, it's not good media for him. But, there's a way that you can turn things around. I mean, look at Cooper Rush, right? Yeah. I mean, there's just different ways you can. But again, I think Carson Wentz, this is going to be a huge game. Dallas week in Washington, Joe, it's like a holiday, all right? It's a big thing. And especially after getting embarrassed on the home field by the Philadelphia Eagles, this is going to be a huge game. Now, luckily that last game, Dallas didn't look the greatest, but they were also playing the Giants. But once again, with how Washington played, you better believe they're going into this next game very confident about what they can do against this Commanders football team. So all in all, it's not just on Carson Wentz, but hopefully him and the offensive line. I don't know what he needs to do. Maybe go buy him Rolexes or something, but you got to do something, Carson, to get you some better protection.
Definitely does. He needs to get that O-line just adoring him out there to face, especially the Dallas Cowboys. Like you said, their pass rush is absolutely incredible. 2-1 on the season. Cooper Rush really stepping up for Dak Prescott going out. This is going to be quite the game. Your Washington Commanders, 3.5-point favorite. Total is low at 41.5. They have trended to that over, allowing the points coming in. Any thoughts on a betting side of this? Where you'd go? Do you think your Washington Commanders can keep it tight?
Let me tell you, when you think about the points they're going to score in this game, the biggest question, especially with the injuries that Washington has had on the defensive side of the football, right? So you're looking at a defense that's not at its biggest strength just yet. That worries me, all right? Because that tells me that the Cowboys might can get a group going. But on the other end of the football, Cooper Rush and this Dallas offense, the biggest thing with Dallas this offseason and heading into the season was, do they have the wide receivers? Like, do they have the guys, right, that can make the plays? Now, the strong point for Washington was supposed to be the defense. We thought once again, this football season, but that secondary, Joe, they got tested and I think they got exposed. And, the Eagles wide receivers, I'm sure they were really partying it up and having a field day after that game because they were getting, the looks that they wanted. Fuller getting targeted, that last game. I mean, when Smith put the cape on, that was just disrespectful, but at the end of the day, he had a hell of a catch, Joe. I mean, I can't be mad at it. So all that to say, I do think when you're looking at the betting in this game, I do think, Washington is going to want a bounce back game, right, Joe? I mean, again, they got embarrassed at home in front of their fans. They're hearing all this negativity in the media. You're hoping that offensive wise, Washington's going to change the scheme. Once again, I think Washington, when they had that 4-game win streak last season, Joe, and when they were playing really good football, it was when they were running the football well. So Washington's going to somehow, some way have to get back to that, ease the pressure up on Carson to not have to throw the ball as much because it's, again, the offensive line being tested, but short chuck plays. So all in all, I don't think, Joe, this is going to be a super high scoring game. But even if you look at the Eagles game, let's remember, first quarter, Dole Fest. Second quarter, Eagles went off. And luckily in the second half, Washington's defense was able to hold strong. But the Dallas Cowboys too, and I look at that last game. But it's just, Joe, it's hard to place faith on Washington when they've been an up and down team. But, I think that rivalry game and hopefully this bounce back, I really am, again, worried about the injuries on the defense to fully believe in this Washington team.
Yeah, it is a hard one here. Definitely looking at the trends so far this season with them coming out in that first half. I wouldn't be confident in laying or grabbing any points with them in the first half.
No, Joe, they've been shut out. Shut out.
Don't get it. That first half, whatever's happening in that locker room, though, things are better in that second half. Defense is coming out much stronger. The secondary is not allowing those issues. So second half for your Washington Commanders, hopefully they don't give up too many points in the first two.
That's the big key because, when you're playing catch up, you don't want to get too far behind. Once again, Carson Wentz still getting used to this offense, still getting used to these guys here, and this scheme, he's not Patrick Mahomes, folks. Patrick Mahomes, you might be down 24-0. Not that the Chiefs would be. But you might still feel confident, right? Because you have somebody like him. But, I think Carson is a solid quarterback. The guys do seem to love him in Washington, but there's going to be a lot more expected of him. But he does need help. And again, the defense is, and honestly, too, the defense, you're hoping that they can create turnovers. And that's one of the great benefits of the Dallas Cowboys. They have a defense that can do takeaways, right? And intercept the football.
Absolutely.
Somehow, some way, Washington's defense is going to have to step up big if Washington is going to win this game in Dallas on the road and bouncing back from just that embarrassing loss that happened on Sunday here at FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland.
Yeah, this defense on paper is incredible. As long as they can live up to what they have on paper, Kelsey, I think your season ticket holders We'll be happy coming into next season and be back, but fingers crossed.
They'll love you, Joe, for saying that in Washington. You'll always have an open seat. But again, like no other stadium, though, I think was like that. Like, I mean, it was honestly it was quite frankly embarrassing. And to be honest with you, I mean, there was more fight. Some people were saying, in the stand than we saw in the game. Because at one point in the game, Washington was negative yardage. I'm thinking at this point, do we just count the players and the attendance numbers? Like, we just need something more, on the football field. But luckily, like you said, whatever was said at the half, somehow, at least some way, the defense, was able to hear it when they finally got that, touchdown. It was great. But all in all, Washington they have a lot of work to do if they're going to be taken seriously as a true contender, not just in the NFC East, but in the National Football League.
Well, my fingers are crossed that you guys get things together. Have a great game against Dallas. No one wants a snooze fest here, so I hope it's a good one. We're going to bring you back on in the next couple of weeks to talk some basketball regular season.
I look forward to it. Yes,
We're going to be talking it, but in the meantime, Kelsey, where can everyone find you?
Well, thanks again so much, Joe, for having me. Absolutely, absolutely love joining you. I'm on social media, The Real K Nelson. Check out my website, KelseyNicoleNelson.com. Facebook as well, Kelsey Nicole Nealson. LinkedIn, Kelsey Nicole Nealson. Chat with me, interact with me. I love speaking with sports fans. Again, once again, my favorite time of the year. And be sure to check out my show, Listen In with KNN, every week on Fox Sports Radio. Thanks so much, Joe. Truly appreciate it.
Oh, it's always the best having you here. You guys, I will be back at the bottom of the hour with another show. Kelsey, until next time, have a great day. Keep smiling. Let's make some freaking money.
Thanks so much, you too, Joe. Bye, guys.